There we go. Brilliant. And a really warm welcome to everyone who is joining us today for our Live Well Live What to Eat to Lose Weight webinar. This is a subject that is dear to many people's hearts, especially those who are on a health or weight loss journey. So we hope to share some really helpful information with you today. It's your opportunity, as always, to bring your weight loss orientated questions. So do feel free to pop them. If you can find the Q&A box, that is the best place to pop them. I can see we've already got a couple of questions in the chat box, so we will do our best to find those. But if the chat gets very busy, it can become a little bit more complicated. Do say hello. I am Ruth Taylor. I'm the nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor, and I am also a registered nurse and health and wellness coach. We've been bringing these webinars to you because we know that it's your opportunity to bring your weight loss questions, and we really want to support you on your weight loss journeys as much as we possibly can. We know that there is a whole load of confusing and conflicting information out there. There's lots of social media posts, there's all sorts of claims being made. So we want to just cut to the chase and share the evidence of what really helps for you and why on your weight loss journeys. But really, it's also about answering your questions. So we have a few slides that we're going to start the webinar with and share with you, and then we'll come over to your questions. I'm joined today by Mandeep. So Mandeep, thank you so much for being here, and do tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you for having me. This is my second webinar now. So my name is Mandeep. I am a pharmacist by background. I'm one of the prescribers here at Boots Online Doctor. I'm also the service lead for the weight management service. I've recently completed my postgraduate diploma in obesity and weight management. So really keen to support as many people as possible on their weight management journeys.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mandeep. And we will be delighted to have you here, I know. And we're also joined in the background by Raman, so thank you so much for being here, Raman, who's going to share any resources that we talk about with you. And you'll get a link in the chat box for those resources, and you can then click on the link and download those onto your computers or phones. So hopefully that should be helpful and straightforward, but do shout if there's any problems. So just a quick check-in. Last week we were talking all about lasting weight loss and some of the things that we can do. And I can remember from the polls that you were talking about focusing on consistency, maybe boosting your protein intake, and really not being overwhelmed when you have a slip up. So wins don't have to be large, they can just be an awareness. But what's been going on for you this week? I'd love to hear from you. And just to let you know, we've got a couple of polls coming up. So we will be sharing those with you, but let's have a look in the chat box and see what's going on. Great. So, okay, cool. So yeah, the recording will be, we'll share you a link for the recording. So I can see there's some comments in here. And also, yeah, please don't share any personal information. You can tell us anything you like, but as long as we don't get any names with phone numbers and things, that can be a little bit scary. Okay, so let's share a poll with you. So we're just going to start with a quick poll. So let's see how we go with that. So these are completely anonymous. I'm just wanting to think, what's your sort of like in your current routine, what's your biggest challenge are you finding right now? Because it really helps us to know what's going on for you. And hopefully it brings some sort of attention for you to be thinking about, okay, what's challenging me right now? These are completely anonymous. We know who's answering the polls. We don't know who's saying what. And really, we don't need to know. It's about you knowing and having that focus and attention for yourselves, isn't it? As much as anything else. So I can see it's sort of like across the board here. Um, so Mandeep, yeah, knowing what to eat. A lot of people are struggling with knowing what to eat. So hopefully today, if you have any questions left by the time we finish the slides, ask away. We want you to go away from today feeling really confident about what to eat, how to make a plate of food, and what is going to work for you. Cravings, really important for us to understand why we have cravings, what's going on. Hopefully, everything we talk about today will make sense and help you understand how to overcome those cravings. A few of you, sort of 13%, which is quite a large number today, are struggling with evening snacking and that consistency. Lots of people are really struggling with staying consistent. And actually, consistency is really helpful And we don't want you to be thinking in terms of fad dieting here. So we'll try and pick up on those things. So let's get started. So we're going to start by looking at these two charts. And this is all about how we balance our blood sugar. So blood sugar balance is right at the very heart of how we lose weight, really and truly. It's sort of like our control switch, if you like, for our hunger, our cravings, and our day-to-day energy. So we really need to focus on getting this in a way that makes it easier, where everything is steadier and where we have less of those cravings, less swings, and when our blood sugar is all over the place, like it is over on this right hand, yeah, left hand side of the chart, on the red side of the chart, everything feels so much harder. We'll have cravings, we'll feel hungry, we'll find life really difficult to manage, we'll find losing weight very hard. Let's go into a little bit more detail. So when we eat any food, it's broken down into the nutrients and also the sugars then enter our bloodstream. This directly affects our blood sugar levels. We're a bit like a car with petrol. If we put the wrong fuel in the car, it won't work. It's exactly the same for us. If we put the wrong fuel in ourselves, we can have the same sort of problems as a car would have. So thinking about this, if we look at the red side of the chart, this is what happens when we eat high sugar or high carbohydrate, high glycemic foods, those sort of easily absorbable foods. Foods like white breads, cakes, biscuits, sweets, any of the sort of white rice, they're very refined. Any of the processed foods like crisps and packets, yeah, all of those really, biscuits are a real killer. So these foods get processed in our bodies really, really quickly. They get broken down very quickly. This then causes a rapid spike in your blood sugar. So when you have a spike in your blood sugar, your body will respond by releasing some insulin. You end up in this whole roller coaster, as you can see by this right-hand side of the, or left-hand side of the chart. Your body then is sort of like constantly in a situation where it's having to release insulin to move sugar out of the blood into our cells to store it as energy to use later. If there's too much insulin, we will store everything as fat. And this is how weight loss happens. This is how we accumulate weight. This is how we accumulate excess body fat. So if there's a big peak in our blood sugar, it'll be followed also by a crash. When we have a crash, our blood sugar drops quickly. You'll notice that you might feel tired, you might feel irritable, you might have headaches, and you may start having cravings and feel hungry again. And that is all how we get into this cycle of craving and feeling hungry and feeling a little bit out of control, reaching for the next snack, reaching for the next cup of coffee with sugar in. It sort of makes absolute sense. And it can be why, when you've had a meal, if it's full of those sort of very easily absorbed carbohydrates and it hasn't got much protein or healthy fat in, it can make it much harder. Our blood sugars will go up very high, they'll come crashing down, and we can feel, even though we've just eaten, that we're really hungry quite quickly again. Now, this whole process makes it much harder for us to manage our blood sugar efficiently, and this can make weight loss really difficult. So we want you as much to move over to this green side of the chart. This is where modeling this sort of behavior will be eating those low glycemic foods that behave very, very differently. These sort of include vegetables, proteins, healthy fats, and a small amount of whole foods. So we're going to look at those in more detail in a minute, what they are, how they should go on your plate, so that really you have an understanding of how this looks for you on a day-to-day basis. When we eat the foods on that green side of the chart, they're broken down much more slowly. Sugar is released gradually into the bloodstream. Our pancreas gives time and sort of produces a smaller amount of insulin, not too much, not too little, and you will feel balanced. You'll feel fuller for longer. You're going to have much more stable energy. And naturally, you will begin to find that you eat less over time because you're not having the cravings, you're feeling satisfied. So we want you to focus on eating the foods we're going to tell you about that really compose of how you get to that green side of this chart. It's not about restriction. It's not about calorie counting. It's about a long-term strategy. And yet, for those of you who are struggling with that consistency, this is the consistency we're talking about. This isn't about perfection, it's just about getting it right, staying on that green side. We want it to be simple, we want less spikes, less crashes, and basically more stability. And that's where you're going to find that the change happens, that you will feel better. You'll notice less brain fog, you'll have more energy, you have less cravings, and you're just going to feel generally better. This is nothing to do with willpower, because if we get our biology right, it really steps in and helps us get this right every day a lot more easily. I'm not trying to overpromise here because I know that this is a little bit tricky to move. If you're over on that right hand side and you want to move over to the green side, this is a learning strategy. So we know that this won't happen overnight. But I promise you, if you get over onto that green side and you start staying there more consistently, you will really notice. Agreed with that, Mandeep?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really helpful, and Ruth, to help us to understand exactly what goes on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how can we do that? Where to start? So, we get lots of questions around, I'm not sure, what to eat or when to eat. And I guess my first one is let's just keep it really simple. And I think Ruth, you mentioned the same thing as well. We have got the Boots Online Doctor, the core meal plan and GLP-1 eating plan. So we'll provide links. So do recommend that you start by downloading these. They'll give you an outline of some of the foods to focus on. And it has a meal builder in there as well. So I guess in terms of keeping it simple, we do recommend you aim to eat 2 to 3 meals a day. Try and reduce snacking. We don't want to make it too restrictive so that you're hungry. But do try and plan as well. There's a lot of information in our webinars as well, which is going to help you to plan ahead to achieve successful long-term weight loss. So planning is key, and try and see it as a long-term plan as well, which is why we're trying to move away from, no gimmicks, kind of like fad diets, but try and make it, it's a way of life, it's a lifestyle, and this is how we're going to eat, moving more towards real foods, as much as we can. And also, if you fail to plan, you're less likely to succeed. There's a lot of emerging research as well now coming out about feeding your biome. So if we're eating foods, to ensure that we're promoting a healthy gut microbiome, this can also help with our weight loss as well. So we're going to talk a little bit more now about the food groups to include in your core eating plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just the simplicity of this is really important for us to wrap our heads around because sometimes I think we can almost feel it's too simple. But I guess what we want you to also think is that this isn't about restriction. We've already said this, but I just really think we all need to relearn. We've worked in a culture, that whole weight loss culture for the last 20, 25 years has been about restriction, restriction, restriction. And then we know the research tells us that if you restrict, the thing that happens next is you will overeat. That's what the research says. This isn't about you. This is about the reality of what happens when we restrict, when we stop eating altogether the foods that we really enjoy, the treat foods. They have to be part of a healthy plan. They just have to be there less often. So we're here helping you, hopefully, with a simple approach, making sustainable habits. And this is about progress and not perfection. So let's move on and talk about the foods. So where are we now? Let's go. Mandeep, over to you.
Protein. So we hear so much about protein, don't we, lately? I feel like there's a lot of talk about protein, and actually it is so vital to our, cellular health. It's part of all of our cells, our chemical reactions. So it is really important that we do try and meet our protein requirements. They're going to help with something called satiety, which is making us feel fuller for longer, and also helping to build our muscle mass and our muscle strength as well. So if I recommend anything, is definitely try and prioritize protein at all of your meals. So the general kind of recommendation is about a gram per kilo of body weight daily. So try and split this, throughout the day across your 3 meals. That will vary, depending on different people, but if you try and keep that as a recommendation. Protein is going to help to balance the blood sugar. So, Ruth, what you mentioned earlier, so that we're not having the spikes and the crashes. Protein is really there to support the rest of our food groups to help to balance that out. It will help with insulin sensitivity, and as we mentioned earlier, with muscle mass and strength as well. So, what are examples? So, I think obviously a lot of people will instantly think of meat sources, so chicken, turkey, but actually, there's such a great variety of vegetarian, vegan sources as well. So, things like tofu, quinoa, beans, lentils, edamame beans are also amazing. So examples, and I think I saw somebody ask in the chat when we joined earlier, can you give me an example of a snack to have in the evening? And actually, we would recommend if you're struggling to sleep or you're getting those hunger in the evening, a small protein-rich snack, something like yogurt, some Greek yogurt with berries, cottage cheese, soya yogurt, tofu. These are great examples of nutritious, filling snacks which will help to hold you. Just a key reminder though, not to eat too soon before going to sleep. So we recommend that you finish eating a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours before going to sleep. So that you may want to consider having your evening meal around 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, then maybe having a protein-rich snack if you feel you need it about 8, 8:30, and then obviously aiming to get to sleep for about 10, 10:30. Obviously adjusting this depending on your lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's so important to get those timings if you can. But again, if you're a work in progress, if you're somebody who's snacking all evening or finding that you are raiding the fridge in the night, then just think about where you can make those changes gradually and make it realistic, because that's reality is really important. So, healthy fats, we talk about these quite a lot, and we want to really help you understand that fats are really important. They really help compose our hormones, they help in terms of cellular messaging, so messages from one cell to another. Getting that insulin into our cells is really important, getting that glucose into our cells is really important, and healthy fats help in terms of the structure of the walls of the fats. So, really important for us to be thinking, okay, we need to eat these. So fats can really help also in terms of that satiety, making us feel full. They work really, really well with protein and also with vegetables. We'll talk about vegetables a bit more in a minute. And instead of noticing that we get that sort of like quick, sudden hunger again, the protein and the fat will really help in terms of that sustained sense of satisfaction. We want to be thinking about healthy fats. They're the ones, so those omega-3 rich fats are really helpful for reducing inflammation in the body. So we want to be thinking about that. And they can help in terms of keeping us warm, transporting those fat-soluble vitamins around our body as well, helping with nerve impulses. We don't need a lot of them though. So if you're eating them as a protein source and you're having those healthy fish, for example, say something like salmon or mackerel, then that can be just your protein source in a meal 2 or 3 times a week. But really, in general, we would be thinking add a small amount of fat to most meals. So you'll be thinking by that, just a small amount of seeds, like a tablespoon or two, or a drizzle of olive oil, or maybe even some nut butter into your yogurt or something like that, just to really boost up those healthy fats as much as possible. So, really important to be thinking about these, bringing them in, not to be scared of them. We still have quite a cultural belief, I think, that fats aren't our friends, but it couldn't be further from the truth. And then think about those vegetables because they are really important. I don't know why I've got something up on my screen that says drag to move, but we definitely want those vegetables there. So think about the colourful vegetables. They're the ones that have less of the sort of starchy carbohydrates in because they grow above the ground. They have less of the starch in. So think about all of the berries, all of the beautifully coloured fruits and vegetables as well. You want to be really, really thinking about that. And we want your plate to be maybe half a plate of vegetables. They are really full of fiber, also full of micronutrients. So all of our vitamins and minerals will be coming in an abundance from these foods. So think colourful, think fiber. Fiber really helps again with satiety. And they're the thing that we can pop on our plate and really not be overly worried about overeating. really, really beneficial to our gut microbiome as well. So we know they can slow your digestion down, they can support gut health, they can keep you feeling fuller for longer. And importantly, in terms of that green chart, they can really help in terms of that blood sugar stability. And that is what we want. So you want to combine your protein, your fats, and fiber from vegetables to create those really satisfying meals that stop you craving. It's really important. So, any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And then we're going to talk a little bit about whole grains, Mandeep.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you, Ruth. So whole grains. So I feel like these get a little bit forgotten sometimes, but they're actually quite vital and a really important part of a healthy, nutritious diet. So whole grains provide us with fiber, vitamins, minerals, nutrients such as your B vitamins, iron, magnesium, selenium. So they're a really incredibly good source of slow release energy for our cells and our day-to-day energy as well. There's a lot of evidence as well to show that whole grain foods also help to regulate our cholesterol and our blood pressure. So eating these regularly as part of your diet can help to reduce the risk of heart disease and diabetes as well. And it's about making, so one of the things that I quite like is just about making small switches. It's really difficult just to wake up one day and completely overhaul your diet. I don't think that is practical, and we all struggle with that. So it's about making the small switches. So, for example, to incorporate whole grains, if you enjoy rice, you may want to switch from white to brown rice. You may want to think about how you can incorporate maybe oats into your diet, quinoa, wheat. So just a small amount, 1 cup maybe with your main meals. It doesn't need to be throughout the day. But we want to try and encourage keeping our starchy carbs as low as possible. So things like your potatoes, pasta, and cereals. So keeping it really simple, include these, as and when you can, making little switches as well. They're not always essential for weight loss, so it doesn't need to be with every
Yes.
also as well.
Oh, sorry, Mandeep. I think we lost you just for a moment there. So, but yeah, maybe it's my internet, maybe it's yours. Cool, we'll see how we go. Now, we wanted to quickly mention hydration. So I hope we're all still here on the same Zoom call. Looks like we are. Something that is often overlooked and something that can be really helpful in terms of supporting weight loss and energy, surprisingly enough. So we know that if you are well hydrated, then you are very likely to be able to lose fat more easily. We know that hydration can help with something called lipolysis, which is something where we're the sort of technical term for breaking down fat. So the research tells us that if we're well hydrated, properly hydrated, not overhydrated, then we will burn fat more easily. Equally, the research says if we're dehydrated, then we will find it hard to lose weight, which makes absolute sense. Interestingly, for many people, we've almost sort of blunted that thirst mechanism, so much so that you might actually read that thirst as additional hunger. So if you are finding that you're leaning over to get a snack between meals, maybe just do a sense check and see whether perhaps something to drink would be better. We'd definitely be recommending water or some clear fluids. If you want to check whether you're well hydrated, then things like looking at the color of your urine can be really helpful. So you want it to be like a straw pale straw color of urine. So that would be, and if it's a darker yellow generally, then you perhaps are a little bit dehydrated. So you can use your urine as a really helpful barometer of how well hydrated you are. Think about reducing those sort of sugary, milky drinks for alternatives. And also, we often get asked about diet sodas and whether they're beneficial, whether they're something we would recommend or not. Generally, we don't recommend them because we know that that artificial sugar, that, the zero type of sugar effect, our body is quite primitive in as much as it still recognizes that it's receiving a sugar. It can't filtrate and think, okay, this isn't a sugar, it's an artificial sugar. So, in terms of its response, it will still elicit the same response. You'll still be creating some insulin. And as we talked about earlier, that's the thing that we want to be managing how much insulin we create, because if we produce insulin when we don't need it, then we are likely to store more fat. So, those artificially sugared beverages don't always help. They might be a nice occasional treat, but maybe just as a general, they're not the things we would generally recommend. And then let's think about what's happening if we're eating for maintenance. Really, this whole core meal plan is designed for anyone who wants to lose weight in a way that you learn to eat in a way that is long-term sustainable. It's not a gimmick. So we would say stick with that core meal plan as much as you can. Have 2 or 3 balanced meals a day. Make sure you've nailed that protein and your hydration. You can start playing a little bit more around those treats though. So you could maybe consider having 2 or 3 treats in a week and just seeing how that works for you. What we don't want you to do is get into that mindset of, I'm on a diet, I'm losing weight, I'm restricting, restricting, restricting. Oh, now I'm not on a diet. I eat everything I used to eat in abundance. And oh my goodness, oh no, my weight is going back on again. We want to move away from that. I know that's oversimplifying and it's not everyone in the room will be doing that, but I think we have lived with that culture for so long that many people adopt that sort of short-term, quick fix attitude, and we want to be moving away from that as much as possible. So we have another poll, and Mandeep, you're going to finish up with any of the sort of like thinking for today.
Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful, Ruth. And I'm a big fan of sort of keeping it simple, really aiming to eat real food. So really having a look at, what I'm eating and if it's a processed or a UPF. So our poll to end with, yep. So we're going to look at what's the one thing that you feel confident to focus on this week. So is it going to be adding protein, balancing your plate, improving hydration, or maybe you're going to think about reducing snacking? And keeping things really simple and consistent.
Yeah, definitely. We'll leave that there for a couple of minutes. And we also would love to hear from you and know which phase of weight loss you're in. So we have a poll we're just going to put up in a minute to ask you about this. I'm not sure if we can do 2 polls at once, so we'll just finish off here. Let's just give you a moment here. Lots of people inspired to improve hydration. How interesting. That's so good because it's something we don't talk about enough, isn't it? So don't forget to use your urine as a barometer. It's so simple, and you can actually check out on the internet. There's some really nice little charts that you can download, so you can have a little look at those, and we'll try and find one for you for another day. But I think they can be really helpful. Lots of you are going to be making sure you add your protein to your meals. Lots of you are going to be working on keeping it simple and consistent. Really like that. So hopefully that's been helpful. We are just going to let you know what we've got coming up over the next couple of weeks. So these are our webinars coming up over the next couple of weeks. And I'm just going to ask you, the last poll is about which phase you're in of weight loss. So do take a look at this. And this is really just so before we come into the questions, we know who we've got with us today. So do take a moment to have a look at that. So thank you. So yeah, next week we're going to be looking all about weight loss through the menopause, which is a really interesting subject. And then we're going to be thinking about not just what to eat, but how to eat the week after that. So hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you there. I am going to stop sharing the slides now. I'm sorry, somebody commented that they were blurry. I did try to increase the size of the slides halfway through, but I don't know if that helped at all. Yeah, so let's have a look at the phases that you're on. So I can see the majority of you are midway through. There is around 40% of you are just starting out, so welcome to you as well. And around 11% of you are in maintenance. So very warm welcome to all of you. And thank you for being here with us today. So we're now going to come to your questions. So we will pick them up initially from the Q&A box, and then we will take it from there and see what we can find in the chat box if we if we have time. Okay. So if you want to put something that you know that we'll look at, please pop it into the Q&A box as much as possible. Oh, good question here. Somebody is asking what we think of fasting. We will talk a little bit about fasting in our How to Eat webinar, which is in a couple of weeks. So do come along to that. It really depends on you, your age, your life journey, whether you're taking a medication, whether you're not. So all of those factors make a difference as to what we think about fasting. But I think generally, for most people, actually just closing the kitchen at 7 or 8 in the evening and not opening it until 7 or 8 the following morning is a great strategy. So, and then it becomes a little bit more nuanced depending on where you are. Yeah, Mandy, do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that's a great kind of starting point. It's just giving your body that time to reset and digest the food that you've eaten as well. I've just noticed as well in the chat a couple of people asking about switching. So, I don't like water. Is it okay to drink squash? And again, we get asked this quite a lot. And I always say it's difficult. If you don't like drinking water, then yeah, absolutely go for squash, go for zero sugar squash. It's not the perfect ideal because your body's still going to recognize it as being sweet and still going to respond in the same way. But if that's how you're going to keep hydrated and it's what you enjoy, I think that's a great switch to begin with. And then when you can, moving on to water as well. So I think
Just
that's
gradually reduce down the level of squash, so great, make it more and more dilute. And maybe do things like, I don't know if anybody drinks fruit or herbal teas, but you can have those cold and they make a nice alternative too. And also thinking about adding maybe some lemon into water just to flavor it, or some herbs, or cucumber and mint is delicious. But that's because I've been drinking it for a few years. I really like it. I probably didn't once. So yeah, lemon and ginger, Jeannie's saying. Sparkling water, yes, it seems to be fine. I've looked at the research. I can't find any evidence that it isn't. If you can go for something that is naturally sparkling rather than um, chemically sparkling, then that's even better. So have a look at the labels.
I'd probably just avoid it if you're on a GLP-1 though, just something that's coming
Yeah, exactly.
through just from like patient feedback I've noticed recently. I'd probably avoid it. It can maybe sometimes make the side effects a little bit more, but yeah, it is a nice little treat, sparkling water.
Definitely. Somebody's asking about polycystic ovary syndrome. We often get asked about polycystic ovary syndrome, but probably not enough at the moment to ask for us to do a consistent webinar just about PCOS. Because really and truly, if you have PCOS, you want to be working on managing your insulin as much as possible. So I would really recommend that you follow that core meal plan. I don't know, Raman, whether we shared the protein content of foods, but if we haven't, can we please share that as well? Because it can really help in terms of understanding how much protein is in food and how much to be aiming for. Yeah, so in terms of your PCOS, I really would recommend eating 2 or 3 meals a day. Try not to snack as much as possible in between because you really want to get that insulin sensitivity working for you, making sure you've got that protein and all of the other foods that we've talked about today. So good luck with that, and I hope that helps. Um, Andy, great one for you here. I don't know if you can see it. Somebody's on Manjaro, they've plateaued. Do I stay on the same dose, 15 milligrams, reduce the dose, have a break, and return at a later date? Gosh, you are summing up how so many people feel. So thank you for asking that question.
That is a great question, and it is obviously slightly different depending on where you are in your journey and in your weight loss journey. But a plateau itself is very normal, and I think this is sometimes what we forget. So it's just our body's natural way of responding to weight loss. So, you will plateau while you're on your weight loss journey, and that's okay. And it might be that you've plateaued and it's just that the numbers on the scales are may not moving, but you could still be losing inches. So I always say to people, like, have a look at what your body shape is doing as well, and not just to focus too much on the scales. In terms of what to do when you hit a plateau, so I often say to my patients, don't do anything immediately. Just keep consistent. have a look at your current diet and your exercise. Is there anywhere else that you think you can make some small tweaks? So continue, make those tweaks. If you're already on a maximum dose, then you can't increase anymore, depending on where you're at in your weight loss journey. So if you're quite close to your goal, or you've reached your goal, you may want to take a break. You may want to reduce your dose for a bit. But usually a plateau, you will get over it. It's just about remaining consistent and just having a look where else can you kind of refine and make those little tweaks. So yeah, so don't be discouraged and don't be disheartened by plateaus. They're very, very normal.
Yeah, and I always say, think with the plateaus, maybe your body just beginning to recalibrate that set point. So actually, it may be your body working with you as opposed to against you. So really, really try and change your mindset around that plateau. So thank you, Mandeep. I agree with everything you've said. It's just so important not to be overwhelmed by them. We've had people here in the webinars who've had been on a plateau stage for several weeks, and it's very demoralizing if all you focus on is the weight on the scales. So really start trying to think about where you've come from, how much better you're already feeling. Think about your energy, think about the clothes you're wearing now, really try and mix it up, because I think if we over fixate on that number, it can really demoralize us to the point where we think, oh, to hell with it, and you eat maybe a few days of the wrong food. We really don't want that for you. Lots more questions from the same person about maintaining weight. Not reached their target weight yet, I can see, but I think everything we've talked about makes sense. So if there's anything that hasn't we haven't picked up, then yeah. So somebody's asking about the same person, I think, but it's relevant. When they decide to come off the injections, is it best to reduce doses prior to finishing them? I would say completely yes. The evidence is take it slowly, reduce down. Agree, Mandeep?
Yeah, we're seeing more and more evidence about staying on lower doses for longer. And again, that dose is going to be different for everybody. It's kind of finding the dose where it's enough to curb your appetite, but not so much that you're actively still losing weight, because then you don't want to go into an unhealthy BMI range either. So it's about finding that kind of sweet dose. So yeah, I would definitely, as emerging evidence, staying on treatment for a lower dose for longer. And also it helps to support all the healthy habits that you've made as well, along the way, along your journey.
Definitely. So it's about it. This is all about making those healthy habits, isn't it? It's about, okay, just reminding yourself you want to be eating consistently as much as possible. And by consistently, we're saying 80% of the time. That's our consistency, that's our benchmark. This isn't about 100% perfection. It's about getting there most of the time, allowing yourself a little bit of wriggle room for those sort of special occasions, or just the moment when you really do need that treat in the week, or whatever it is, or you're going out with friends and you want to just relax and enjoy the evening. It's really important for all of those things to happen in life, because they're the things that keep you motivated and happy, aren't they? Um, Somebody's asking about nuts. Do they always have to be the natural version? I mean, can you ever eat dry roasted or salted versions? I will often roast my nuts and seeds just to give them that extra crunch. And you could put on things if you have the capacity to do that and can be bothered, then you can put on things like some soy sauce or some tamari, and you can make your own flavored nuts, which can make them healthy and less of that salt and less of the dry roasted effect. So that's really worth trying. You literally just do them in an oven or an air fryer for just a few minutes. I don't know if anybody else in the room does that, and if you have any recipes or suggestions you'd like to share, but actually it just really changes them from something a little bit tedious to something a little bit more exciting. But again, you don't want huge amounts of nuts. So it really depends. If you're eating large amounts of nuts, really think about that, because they are very high in calories. We don't talk about calories a load, but when it comes to those sorts of foods, we do need to think about it. How much size is a cup? Oh, that's a really great question, isn't it? A cup is, I think, I'm going to think about my cups in my kitchen. I've got those measurements. Have you got those cups? So, like, think about a teacup. That's sort of cup size, isn't it? So, if you're thinking about vegetables, a teacup would be like one portion of veg. I hope that makes sense. maybe would you say, Mandeep, like half a mug or just
Yeah, I would say so.
oh, here we go, 240 grams. There you go. Thank you for that for the person who's told us. Couldn't think. I was trying to visualize it in my head. Cool. What are some effective strategies for maintaining weight loss with PCOS and perimenopause when traditional diet and exercise is doing nothing? What other options or treatments should I consider? I really struggle with sweet cravings. I would say really up your protein. Mandeep, what would you say? I'm thinking
Yeah,
protein. Yeah.
I agree. I think trying to increase your protein. So people always say, like, well, how can I add protein in? So I always think whenever you're building your meal, and obviously the meal planner will help with this as well, have a look on your plate. What is your protein source? And then try and build your plate around that. So it might be that you start with some grilled chicken. So add like your vegetables, or somebody asked earlier, can I have salad instead? Absolutely. If you don't want to have vegetables for lunch, have your salad. That's absolutely fine. Have your chicken, have like your salad. As Ruth you mentioned earlier, maybe think about adding a healthy fat source onto your plate as well. So that will be an example, of something which is high in protein, a great kind of lunch source, if you like. But yeah, no, I agree. I think increasing your protein, and I definitely found that as well when I was on my weight loss journey as well. It definitely makes you feel fuller for longer, as well. So you're kind of not chasing throughout the day. When you're working, you tend to go for coffee, and then you want something sweet. So instead of trying to chase the highs and the lows, I know if I prioritize my protein throughout the day, I'm less likely to do that.
Yeah, and just make sure you're also getting that fiber in as well. I mean, all of these basic foods are so underrated because they're not sexy and they're not the latest thing, but actually they are the thing that are going to see you through. So it's just about making them tasty, putting spices and herbs in, and just making them something that you really enjoy, I think. And in terms of that sort of perimenopause, menopause, and PCOS, it's all about the insulin sensitivity in your perimenopausal phase. We'll talk about this next week, but we do become less insulin sensitive naturally in that stage of life. So it's really important to double down on all of these recommendations and be thinking about, okay, when I'm at the gym, I also need to do some resistance because the resistance is the thing which is going to help you maintain your muscle strength, and that's really important in terms of longevity of weight loss and actually your health as well. Just, it's got to be about our health too, hasn't it? So all of those things, we'll talk about it in much more detail next week, but those are the key things to be thinking about. Being active, we were talking this morning in work, weren't we, in a meeting about doing that sort of Pomodoro technique where you maybe if you're sitting working, you work for 45 minutes or 50 minutes and then you take a 10-minute movement break. And I think we all perhaps need to do a lot more of that, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm guilty of that. So I do try and think, right, every kind of 10 to the hour, I'm going to do 10 minutes of walking and just try and incorporate more movement throughout the day. Absolutely.
Or
I've
even
got,
standing rather than sitting, like just use a standing option for being on calls and things. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I think somebody's asking here, they feel quite tired, they've been on treatment, and how to. So again, I would think about foods. Are you eating enough? Maybe that's contributing to being fatigued, staying hydrated, as well. And again, just speak to your healthcare provider. You may need, your dose adjusting, but definitely looking at making sure that you're eating enough and staying hydrated is quite important.
Definitely the case. Somebody's asking if lentils are a whole grain, or if they contain protein. I don't know if we've shared the protein content in food, Raman, but if we haven't, can we please, or maybe share it again? And you'll see those vegetarian or vegan proteins also on there and how much protein they have per 100 grams. This is really important for us to all comprehend that, how much protein, when we see that pile of lentils, how much that is going to be protein in terms of that relative weight. Um, Absolutely, if you're eating lentils, they can be delicious and a protein source. They don't count as a whole grain as such. So have a look at the information that we're sharing. Um, yeah, but they are less protein rich than a sort of meat option or a fish option. But it's personal choice, isn't it? And dietary preferences. So yeah, if you are a vegan or a vegetarian, then do try and bring in some of the tofu as well, because that can be amazing in terms of its protein content and satiety as well. I just think sometimes with the lentils, you have to eat so much more that it's almost hard to eat that amount, isn't it?
And someone's asking here, can we drink black coffee with no sugar throughout the day to avoid eating too much? I would probably say no, don't do that. Eat food, but like we talked about earlier, try and keep it, look at real foods, making sure that we're eating nutritious food. You know, our body needs key nutrients. Drinking just black coffee throughout the day, we're not going to get the energy. It's not sustainable long term. And it doesn't sound very exciting. So where you can do, try and eat real food.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I agree, Mandy. Somebody's asking about how they would know they're overhydrated. So that's a really interesting question and really worth covering. So you would probably find that you're passing urine, peeing quite regularly, maybe even more regularly. You might notice that the color of your urine is really, really clear. So almost to the point where it's like water coming out the other end. So really think about that. Have a look on your sort of like have a look and see if you can find on the internet a chart and just compare your urine to the colors on that chart. There are some available. I was looking recently. So yeah, do have a look at that. Yeah. And maybe also, I think if we're overhydrated, we can sometimes feel a bit lightheaded because we're almost like overhydrating everything. So yeah, have a look at that. We do, somebody's asking about emotional eating. We have a whole webinar on emotional eating. It's a really important webinar and really worth coming along to, but we do have a replay until we rerun that. So Raman, if you could share the replay for the link for the replays, you would find the emotional eating webinar in the replays. It's such an important topic. Somebody's asking, are homemade snacks better for you if you feel the need to snack in the evening? Are they, as they're less likely to be UPF other than perhaps baking, air frying them? Okay, Mandy, what can we think of for some nice homemade snacks?
Yeah, it depends. So I think my go-to is always a protein yogurt and berries, like blueberries, raspberries. I think they're easy. The kids enjoy them, so you can all have them. Um, so I do try and encourage more of that instead of going for like the crisps and the chocolate. Handful of nuts, again, just a small handful is absolutely fine as well. As a quick snack, go-to, quite filling as well.
Roasted chickpeas. Yeah, I love roasted chickpeas.
Yeah, and edamame beans, I think, is kind of that's of my new favorite, my newfound favorite at the moment, and so nutritious. So, I think Ruth, you've got me onto that after some of our discussions. But yeah,
Okay,
that's a great quick
okay.
snack as well.
That's perfect. And also things like, I don't know if anybody's ever made those homemade kale chips, but they are really delicious. So, Mandeep, if you haven't tried those,
Oh,
that's
no, not yet.
you. Yeah, they are really, really good. But obviously, kale needs to be in season. I'm not sure it is currently. But yeah, they're great. Homemade chickpeas. And also, don't forget just the basics. Like, you could even have like a little piece of cheese if you like cheese. Sometimes that can really just be the answer, can't it? And I think just have something that you really enjoy. And you can use tinned chickpeas to do those homemade snacks. It's absolutely fine. There's no drama in that at all. Um, Yogurt and berries always. It's just such an easy one. And protein shakes. I think if you're really struggling, I can see that popped up in the chat box. If you're really struggling to get your protein in, or you're an evening snacker, or find getting to sleep difficult because you're feeling a bit hungry, then actually, yes, you could maybe try a protein based sort of smoothie and see with the protein powder and see how that holds you. Sort of aiming for 10, 15 to 20 grams of protein there. And that might just be the thing that tips you from being somebody who just can't get rid of those sort of cravings and urges to somebody who feels really balanced. And we're also, I think what we forget is how unique we all are. So actually, what works for one of us is going to be the worst thing that we could suggest for somebody else. So never be scared to say, I've tried that and it didn't work. It's absolutely fine because we know we're not all going to be satisfied with the same things. Somebody's asking about tuna. Is it a good fish to eat instead of salmon? It's a great source of protein. We generally recommend only having it maybe once a week just because it tends to have more toxins in. So we don't want you to be having it a lot more mercury in. Um, and if you want the healthy fats, then you want to be going for the fresh tuna, just because the canned ones don't seem to have it in.
Someone's put a really great snack on here, which I think I might try. So bananas, oats, natural peanut butter, and cinnamon mixed up, popped into small molds to make snacks. I think that sounds quite nice.
It does sound nice. It depends on who you are. For me, that would be way too carby, and I just would never lose weight if I ate that. That's how my body works. That postmenopausal, no thyroid. Here we go. Yeah, I have to just be more cautious, but it does sound like a nice, delicious treat. Okay. Somebody says they enjoy eating fruit and generally aim for 5 portions a day. I keep hearing that is not okay due to sugars. Now, I would say if you're on somebody who's on a weight loss journey, 5 portions of fruit a day may actually be a little bit more than we would generally recommend on a weight loss journey. We would probably recommend doing if you're managing to have as many portions of vegetables. But if not, then I'd flip it round. I'd have more vegetables than fruit and go for the colourful vegetables as much as possible. And when you have that fruit, make sure you're sort of nailing it at the end of your meal so that you've sort of paired it in with the protein and the healthy fat, or you're putting a very small number of nuts with it. So you get that balance of protein, healthy fat, and the carbohydrate from the fruit. Because again, that will get you over onto that green side of the chart, and the fruit on its own might put you well and truly in the middle or over towards the red. Would you agree, Mandy?
Yeah, I agree with that as well, especially with some of the side effects which they may be prone to with the GLP ones as well. So yeah, no, that's definitely sensible.
Yeah, somebody's saying, what does sparkling water cause? I would say that's a gas type problem for some
It
people.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's a question here which I think I've probably asked you in the past, Ruth. Can you drink kombucha?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go for it. Yeah,
I remember.
a
Yeah.
nice alternative, something to learn to love is going to really help your gut microbiome. And there's so much interesting research about the microbiome, not only for our health, but also for weight management. So really worth boosting those beneficial bacteria, beneficial biotics as much as possible. Um, Advice, Mandeep, about alcohol consumption when taking a GLP-1.
Yeah, so we don't generally recommend that you drink alcohol with any medicine, but especially not with a GLP-1. So the couple of reasons for that is um, one, it could increase your risk of side effects, and the one that we worry about the most is pancreatitis. And also, if you are drinking alcohol, then your body is not going to be burning fat in the same way because your liver is going to prioritize getting rid of the toxins out of your body. So you're actually stopping your body from reducing fat. So I would probably recommend that you avoid as much alcohol as possible. You know, if it's a social occasion, you need to have like maybe a drink, fine. But yeah, do try and limit your intake as much as possible. Bearing in mind, you could get side effects, and also it's going to hinder your fat loss journey as well.
Yeah. Somebody's saying that when they have an alcoholic drink, they find their weight balloons up. And why might that be? It might just be that you're having something that is creating an inflammatory effect in your body, I would say. So it might not be true weight gain. It may just be an inflammatory response. You might find that you're holding on to more fluid. But again, exactly what Mandeep said, if you're pairing that with a medication, then we would generally recommend not to do that as much as possible. So see how you go with that. Somebody is on oxygen and cannot walk for exercise. I have lost 4 stone. What else can I do? That is absolutely brilliant. Well done to you. Really want to shout out how successfully, that's absolutely amazing. Well done to you. What else can you do in terms of movement? So let's think about movement. I think movement, we've got some brilliant weight loss videos that we can share a link to. So have a look at those. So Raman, if you could share the link to the weight loss exercise videos, that would be good. Now just start very minimally, even just like 2 2 minutes to begin with. It is about building up from where you are. If you're unable to walk, really think about the strength of your arms and your upper arms. So, is it that you could get a baked bean can or something out of a cupboard and use that as a little weight to really build up the muscles in your arms? And if you're in a wheelchair or if you're not walking, are you able to use your lower legs and do some strengthening from a chair position in your lower legs? Somebody's just shared the Mr. Motivator as well. He's got some great chair-based exercises, and the NHS also have some chair-based exercises. So, do have a look around. It's about just bringing movement in as whatever way you can. And it's really helpful if you can just do a small amount. Somebody is saying exercise can increase the appetite a lot. Is there a better way to approach exercise and how to manage this? I have heard this before. Mandeep, anything you can think of?
I guess planning your day is quite important. So if you know you're going to be doing a workout, maybe planning your meals beforehand so that you know you are, again, we come back to protein, don't we? But making sure that you are full so that you're ready for that workout. Having a snack planned for post-workout as well, so that you're not kind of instantly going for that, like the sugar hit, like a chocolate bar or something. So it does come back down to sort of planning your day and planning that around your workouts as well, and making sure that you're keeping hydrated as well if you've done quite an intense workout.
Definitely hydration really important. Maybe having a snack straight away, having something prepared, maybe even a protein-based smoothie. So it's really easy to absorb as well. Maybe the answer just to get you over that hurdle. Somebody's asking if skipping breakfast or can hinder or help weight loss. It's so individual. We will pick that up in that the how to eat webinar as well. But it is very, very amazing how it varies from individual to individual. And I think also life stage makes a difference. Generally, I think the trend now is to try not have breakfast, but maybe to bring your dinner forward in the evening and have that gap overnight. So there's a real bonus in just getting that stability. So it also depends on how you feel for the rest of the day. So just missing protein, you might feel fine in the morning, but if you're finding the evenings are a struggle, put the breakfast back in because your evening may improve. Um, Sorry, somebody's saying about not having creamy dressings, but find it difficult not to have it on salads. Could you try something like some olive oil on your salad, or maybe like some tahini, which is delicious and really healthy as well? So have a think about that. Anything you'd add, Mandeep?
No, I think sauces, we do forget sometimes actually how calorific and actually how processed they are as well. So if you are, being quite mindful about what you're eating, do have a look at sauces as well in your intake and see where you can make the switches like you just recommended, maybe having an olive oil or tahini instead of like mayonnaise, for example, is the first one that comes to my mind. But yeah, definitely having a look at sauce intakes.
Yeah, somebody's asking about that minimum protein. So the minimum, we'd say absolute minimum is zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram. So we generally recommend about 1 gram per kilo. So if you're struggling to get that, go down a little bit, but don't go down too far because it's a thing that helps with satiety, insulin sensitivity, um, muscle strength. All of those things are really important when we're losing weight. So if you're struggling, just gradually increase it. Look at different sources as much as you can, and just bring them in. And maybe think about that before bedtime snack with some protein there as well, if you can't get it all in over those 3 meals.
I think someone's asking here about treatments in pregnancy. So at the moment, there isn't any treatments that we would recommend during pregnancy. They're not tested. So yeah, we don't recommend any of the weight loss treatments. But again, just looking at your diet, making sure that you're eating adequately throughout the day is probably what we'd recommend.
Yeah. Somebody's asking about switching weight loss medications. If you're a Boots Online customer or patient, whatever you call yourselves, then please write in and we'll advise you. That really is something we can advise you with on your patient messaging service. So please do join us and ask us there. We've answered about alcohol, so thank you. Somebody's saying that they're using tinned soups and generally having soup and fruit as a meal and finding weight loss successful, I would say maybe try putting a little bit more protein into that processed soup. So you could chop up some chicken and pop it in, or you could pop in some tinned chickpeas if you needed to, whatever really works for you, or some lentils. I find that really helps in terms of satiety. Let's not over worry about the nutritional side of it. It is a work, we're all works in progress. So, actually, if you're managing that and it's working for you and you feel satisfied, don't beat yourself up. When you have time, maybe think about making a homemade soup. But we have to all be realistic in what we can achieve as well. Somebody is asking about a couple of squares of dark chocolate. I say yes, absolutely. Have it, enjoy it, cherish it, enjoy the moment. Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of squares. Somebody's asking about basil seeds, chia seeds, and things similar to this. Good to include. Yeah, chia seeds, especially nice sources of healthy fats in those. Flax seeds again. Basil seeds are a new one for me, so can't comment. Any thoughts on that?
Not come across basil seeds. I am a fan of chia seeds and flax seeds and any type of seeds, to be fair, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. I think they're really good to try and incorporate that fiber into your diet as well, which can be quite difficult to achieve as well throughout the day.
Yeah. Somebody's saying about oregano and black seed gel capsules to help remove waste from the body. I think that's quite yeah, I would just stick with if you're struggling to have your bowels open or you're a bit constipated, then pop some flax seeds or some chia seeds in to your yogurt and see how you get on with those. You can soak flax seeds overnight and then swirl them in for your breakfast. That can really help. I would just go for that natural thing. I think some of these products are not necessarily everything we would wish them to be. So can't comment. Should you avoid apples if you have diabetes or limit it to one or two apples? Apples are generally a low glycemic fruit, so I would say you can enjoy those and combine them with a couple of nuts. Absolutely fine. I can't see a reason, unless if you're using a blood sugar glucose monitor, like a continuous glucose monitor, and you notice that your blood sugars spike when you have an apple, maybe you've got something going on for you. But generally, I would say you're going to be okay. Raman, last question. We're just about hitting 2 o'clock. Supplements with collagen. This is quite a trendy subject as well, isn't it? Any thoughts?
So yeah, we do get asked a lot about supplements. I tend to say go for what you need. I think if you ideally you want to get as much as you can from your diet, as opposed to having supplements. If you're on a weight loss journey, then you may want to think about adding a supplement in. If you want to add in collagen, that would be absolutely fine. But just have a look at your needs rather than kind of taking a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Definitely. There's some really interesting research about things like creatine and collagen and whether they help with weight loss, whether they help with skin beneficial from that perspective. We are looking at the research and we will let you know. We're all done for today. Thank you so much for time and being with us. And please do register for the upcoming webinars over the next couple of weeks. It probably is too late for us to share our feedback link, so we will do that next time. But if there's anything that you would like to know, don't hesitate to come back and ask. And hopefully we've covered the majority of the questions. I think there's still a few that are uncovered. So apologies for that. Have a great week, everyone. And thank you so much to Mandeep and to Raman for being here with us today. We are back at the same time next week at 1 o'clock.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks, Ruth. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.